Well, first and foremost, I want to thank Dr. Rebecca Codija and Dr. Cheryl Martins for organizing this incredible event. Thank you to FLACSO Ecuador, Universidad San Francisco de Quito, and the Andrés Bello Foundation for putting together such an incredible event. My name is Leland Lazarus. I'm the Associate Director of the Florida International University Gordon Institute for Public Policy. And I am our resident US, China, and China Latin America researcher. And today I'm going to talk to you about a research topic that we've been focusing on for the past 2 years, which is the rise of Chinese organized crime in the United States, in Latin America and the Caribbean, and beyond. So let me first start off by explaining that the Wall Street Journal just earlier this year released an article, and the title of that article was "How Dirty Money from Fentanyl Sales is Flowing Through China. Chinese money brokers are teaming up with Mexican cartels, greasing the wheels of the fentanyl trade." Now, we focused on this idea of geocriminality, or what are the ways in which state actors like China, Russia, and Iran, how are they leveraging criminals in order to further their national interests? And so in the case of Iran, it's the funding of terrorist groups in other countries like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen. In the case of Russia, it's hiring killers and hitmen to go after human rights activists in other countries. And in the case of China, it's been paying activists or hackers in order to hack key infrastructure, so it gives them a plausible deniability. But there hasn't been much research on potential connections between the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese criminal actors that are operating around the world. And so over the past 2 years, we've focused on this topic. In 2023, we came up with the report called Triads, Snakeheads, and Flying Money, the underworld of Chinese criminal networks in Latin America and the Caribbean. And we focused on 4 key areas. One was the fentanyl precursor trade, 2, money laundering, 3, wildlife trafficking, and 4, illegal migration and human smuggling. Of course, there was the increase of illegal Chinese migrants that were coming to the United States through Ecuador and Panama and Central America. Then we followed up with another report in 2024 called From Fujian to Flushing, Chinese Criminal Networks in the Americas and Beyond. And this is where we did an even deeper dive into the how, right? Exactly how are these Chinese groups operating? How are they engaging in this illegal activity? How are they connected to other actors in the United States and around the world? It's called From Fujian to Flushing because the vast majority of the Chinese illegal actors are from Fujian province. And part of that has to do historically as well. A lot of the Chinese diaspora in Latin America and the Caribbean are from Fujian province. And then Flushing refers to Flushing, Queens. That's an area in New York that has a very sizable Chinese population, but it's also an epicenter where a lot of these Chinese illegal actors are spreading their activities, exporting their activities, and also recruiting for their criminal activities. I would like to say from the get-go that we did not find any direct evidence linking the Chinese Communist Party to these criminal networks. What we do see, however, is a trend where a lot of these criminal actors also are prominent members in their local business communities. And these Chinese business associations of Ecuador or of Peru or of some other country, they also have deep connections to the Chinese embassies there and the United Front activities of the Chinese. And so there are no direct ties, but there are indirect ties that way as well. And so I'm going to talk briefly about the fentanyl trade, money laundering, marijuana farms, and wildlife trafficking before going into some of the recommendations that we offered. The first is fentanyl. Over the past few years, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration has called fentanyl the deadliest drug the United States has ever faced because it's so potent and it's so easy to produce. And the vast majority of the fentanyl precursors that are ending up into the hands of Mexican drug cartels, who then make it into pills and ship it to the United States, killing 100,000 Americans a year. The vast majority of those precursors come from China. Now, last year, the U.S. House of Representatives Special Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, they did a hearing in which they discussed ties between the CCP and these chemical companies. And what they found out is that the Chinese government offers tax rebates to Chinese chemical producers that are producing these fentanyl precursors. Many of these fentanyl precursor producers are state-owned companies, and so that means that the central government is benefiting economically from this. Many of the exporters are using various Chinese websites, and the Chinese government could easily shut down those websites if they want to, but the enforcement is on again, off again. And when US law enforcement have tried to ask the Chinese counterparts to support, they've also been reluctant in some areas as well. This is a case study of the Hubei Aux biotech company that engages in exporting fentanyl. You see here the picture on the far left shows how they package the fentanyl precursors, and that they'll actually package it in what looks like makeup foundation, right? Or makeup products in order to hide its true purpose. And they sell their products on WhatsApp and WeChat. The second is money laundering. The Chinese money laundering organizations have become the main money launderers for the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels in Mexico. This is very concerning because we also know that both of those cartels have expanded their influence all throughout Latin America and the Caribbean, including in Ecuador. And the working assumption of folks in the US law enforcement and elsewhere is that as those two cartels have expanded their influence, Chinese money laundering organizations have also expanded their services in other countries around the region. And the main way in which they do this is a method that they call flying money, or 飞钱. And this is a step-by-step look at how they do this. So step one is US-based cartel associates hand off cash fentanyl proceeds to a Chinese money broker. Then Mexican cartel members receive the equivalent in pesos from a Chinese broker in Mexico. And this is where the Chinese money launderer then gets a 4% commission. Then step three, wealthy Chinese people who want cash in the United States in order to buy real estate or pay for their son and daughter's education, they deposit local currency in renminbi with brokers in China. And then finally, in return, they get money inside the US, evading Chinese government regulations limiting transfers. And China has limited the capital export of up to $50,000. And so that's why wealthy Chinese individuals need this money. But it's not just this flying money system. There's also the use of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Tether. There's the leveraging of Chinese students who are studying abroad in the United States in order to help them launder money as well. And they're also leveraging illegal marijuana farms in order to launder money as well, which I will talk to briefly. This is a quick case study just from last year where various US law enforcement ended up breaking a illegal Chinese money laundering network and it was called Operation Fortune Runner. Here you see actors, right, from Mexico, from the US, and from China, all involved in this illicit activity. There's the illegal marijuana market. As I mentioned before, Chinese illegal actors have essentially cornered the market in illegal marijuana in the United States. They're operating in at least 22 of the 50 states in the United States, and they've chosen very rural areas in order to do this. Oklahoma, Maine, Northern California, New Mexico. This is a example of a very large marijuana operation going on in New Mexico. And some people have said, why is this a huge issue? Because marijuana, it's actually legal in quite a few US states, and it's not as potent of a drug as cocaine or methamphetamines. But this is a issue because the Chinese illegal groups are using the illegal marijuana market as a way to continue to launder money, another way to launder money. But it's also becoming a forced labor and human rights issue because a lot of the illegal Chinese migrants who have entered into the United States from Latin America, they first get to Flushing, Queens, or Los Angeles, or another area, and then they get lured into working in some of these marijuana farms with the promise that they'll make a lot of money each month. And then they get there and they find out that their travel documents will be taken away. They're forced to work under oppressive conditions for multiple hours a day. If they are a female worker, there's increased risk of sexual exploitation. And there's also other illegal activities that happen on the site of these illegal marijuana farms, like illicit gambling, prostitution, and other drug smuggling as well. And last but not least is the phenomenon of wildlife trafficking. We work very closely with an NGO that's called Earth League International. And the CEO of Earth League International, Andrea Crosta, he has called wildlife trafficking the soft underbelly of Chinese crime. They have identified dozens of different illegal Chinese networks that are operating in countries throughout the region, in Ecuador, in Peru, in Colombia, Brazil, Guyana, Suriname, Mexico. And they are trafficking in jaguar parts and shark fins, totawaba bladders, and other illicit wildlife in order to satiate the demand for traditional Chinese medicine in China. This has been an issue because our partner, Earth League International, they have coined this term crime convergence, or the idea that one group that is engaged in this kind of illegal activity, just wildlife, the chances are is that they're also leveraging the same routes in order to engage in other illicit crimes. And so there are multiple examples of how these networks who are selling wildlife, illegal wildlife, are also selling drugs and trafficking in humans and organizing illegal marijuana farms. And so this is the way in which it's all connected. Here's a map that Earth League International has created, and it shows networks, South American networks, South American groups 8, 9, and 10 that are operating in both Ecuador and Peru. And this is the trade routes that they're leveraging in order to ship their animal products to Zhejiang province, to Guangdong province, Hong Kong, and Vietnam. Now, this is a trend that is happening not just in the United States, not just in Latin America and the Caribbean, but elsewhere around the world. We see it in Canada, where Chinese illegal groups are engaged in money laundering and illegal marijuana farms. You see the same thing in the UK. money laundering, illegal marijuana, and the use of Chinese students in order to launder money. You see it in Italy. You see it in Chile, where just a couple of years ago, they busted a large illegal marijuana network. And the Chilean law enforcement have now created a task force specifically dedicated to going after Chinese organized crime. You see it in Southeast Asia with the rise of these digital scam farms in rural areas in the Philippines and Myanmar, and Vietnam, where they are scamming people in the United States and in Europe. And you see it in Australia and Africa as well in terms of wildlife trafficking and illicit gangs. Last but not least are the policy recommendations that we had. A lot of these policy recommendations are specifically geared towards US law enforcement, but I think that it can resonate with law enforcement agents in Latin America and the Caribbean as well. For the first two, the current administration have actually already done these first two, which is impose sanctions or tariffs on the PRC. The United States already has a 145% tariff on China, and I understand that there are some potential sanctions in the works right now, and officially repealing the $800 de minimis rule. This was basically a rule that all small packages that were coming into the United States through the US border, that was about $800 and less, came in tariff-free, so without tariffs, and with minimal scrutiny. So a lot of the Chinese chemical exporters were leveraging this de minimis rule in order to ship their fentanyl precursors to the United States. Now that is no longer available. Other key policy recommendations include boosting domestic and international port security. That includes in ports in and around Latin America and the Caribbean. We know that not just Chinese illegal groups, but also other transnational criminal organizations are using bribery and other means in order to really control the ports in various countries. And so this is key. As I mentioned before, quite a few of the illegal Chinese actors are from Fujian province. And so there should be increased scrutiny of travelers coming from Fujian province. We should create an international task force dedicated specifically to Chinese criminal networks. Law enforcement agents should consider banning WeChat in the United States, which is the Chinese group, just like there's a potential ban on TikTok. And then also closely monitoring Meta in order to monitor WhatsApp, since that's also being used as well. Proactively pressure other countries, not just Ecuador, but Bolivia, Nicaragua, Suriname, and now the Bahamas, in order to stop the flow of Chinese illegal migration. And lastly, increased scrutiny of local Chinese businesses and cultural associations that are operating in our various countries. Again, we shouldn't demonize the Chinese diaspora, the Chinese communities in our countries, but we do also need to realize the way in which Chinese criminal actors and in some cases the Chinese government itself are leveraging these local Chinese businesses and cultural associations in order to impact the sovereignty in various countries around the region. And so thank you so much for your time. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.